Thomas Mace Archer Mills from the Monarchist Society. Hello, Thomas Mace Archer Mills. What a great name, and unsurprising that you are from the Monarchist Society. So why are so many people complaining about the Crown?
Well, the problem is, it used to be entertainment, but people, especially younger people, are not seeing it as entertainment. They're seeing it as a look back into history of what factually had happened. So they're getting a little bit confused. And we mostly think that young people might have it together, but we live in a very disposable society right now. And young people really just don't give a fig about the truth. They actually care about what they see and make up their own minds, whether it's real or not.
So you think this is why people are getting so worked up? Because, I mean, it does very clearly state that it is a dramatized series of events.
But it all depends. Because we had Dame Judi Dench with her campaign for a statement before saying that this is fake, it's fabricated, which is true. But when you watch television now, when they're doing the adverts, there isn't a disclaimer. There isn't anything. It's only when you watch it. And what bothers me, and it should actually really bother the majority of this nation, is that young people 18 to 24 years old are actually coming out in droves and saying, well, not even 30% of us support the Crown. And I'll tell you why. Well, that's because I watched season 5. And oh my gosh, I don't think the king should be king, and what they did to Diana and all of this. So this country, we lived through this 25 years ago. And most of these young people, they weren't even born then. So try to ask people to do research, especially young people. They'd rather just watch something rather than read and actually really delve into the facts and the truth of the situation. So when we read the BBC report last week, the person said, no, I've watched The Crown. It showed me just how horrible the king and queen are. I don't think they should be the king and queen. And thank you to the Crown. Oh my gosh. I absolutely had a slight coronary, and I'm sitting there and I'm saying, if these are the people who are eventually going to leave this country, the United Kingdom is really in a quandary.
I mean, no spoilers. I think I remember what happens. But are there any events in the show that you find particularly distasteful?
Well, I find the whole thing distasteful, but that's just me. But when we look at what's being put out there for entertainment, I don't think that private phone calls that were illegally really taken by the media should have been included. We know what happened. This is what we're looking at is a very brand new monarchy. We have a new king, a new queen. I'm really just upset that the timing of season 5, we just lost Her Majesty, the late Queen. And I really think if people are going to be looking at what Netflix is putting out and actually misconstruing it for the truth and actually taking away from this fabricated piece of cinematographic work, it's going to cause a lot of problems, I think, going forward, because the young people, if they don't attach any sort of value to something, they throw it out. We're a disposable society now. And if they're not feeling any sort of affiliation with or a value on the monarchy, eventually it could come up to be questioned. And they wouldn't have a problem, I think, looking towards abolition.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the Queen, because I would argue that certainly the first series of The Crown sort of set up in some ways this, it's not a myth because we know it's true, but the idea of her sacrifice and what she gave for this country. So
yes, it did.
So in that way, you could argue that it did good for the monarchy.
Well, it can be yes and it can be no, especially when we look at what happened in Aberfan in Wales, and people didn't really understand why the Queen waited. And when we look at the director, we look at the writers, they are Republicans. And I think a lot of those earlier seasons did depict the royal family as aloof, not caring, self-obsessed, only concerned about themselves. And the Queen has never been that way. So I did take umbrage with that.
The Queen has never been that way, but have other members of the royal family been that way?
No. Sometimes I'm not going to say any names. He's been through enough.
Come
But
on.
one who is, well, we'll talk
We're not
about
going to
Prince
take away your
Andrew
mirrors.
if you want.
You're safe.
But when we look at it, there is a lot of good that has come out because it does show the hard work that the Queen had done. It showed the sacrifices of her and Prince Philip, but also the younger children and Princess Anne. I can't say enough about that woman. What a fantastic asset to this country, and the support that we saw from her during the funeral, not only with her mother, but also her brother, the King. So there are some good attributes that have come from the crown, but things have changed since season 4. They've changed in the country, they've changed in the national psyche, and literally the government, the constitution, everything has changed since September of this year before season 5. So we are looking at treading on some ground that is a bit shaky, especially with such a new reign now underway.
Absolutely. Well, look, I'll go home after this and watch it, and I'll get back to you. Thomas, thank you very much for making
Let's have another debate on that.
We've had so many double barrels on the show before.